When I was in the factory, I couldn't understand anything about this unseen disease everyone was talking about.
Afia, not her real name, is a garment worker in Bangladesh. Her words are voiced by a producer.
They gave us soap and water to wash our hands and masks to wear, but I could not work out why. It was so hot in the factory and wearing the mask was like suffocating. I only wore them when the big bosses came for their inspections. Then when they left, I took it off and took deep breaths.
This was 2 months ago. Afia was a sewing machine operator in one of Bangladesh's many garment factories, a job she'd been doing for 14 years. But the deadly coronavirus was now sweeping across the world. I'm Caroline Bailey, and on assignment on the BBC World Service this week, we're looking at the impact of COVID-19 on the millions of people working in Bangladesh's clothing factories, suppliers to the global fashion industry.
On the floor where I worked, there were 5 rows of machines, 80 or 90 in a single row, and about 600 to 700 workers crammed together.
But soon, as fears about coronavirus grew, Bangladesh followed other countries around the world.
The factory people told us they were shutting down.
Confusingly, the government announced that a national holiday would begin on March the 26th. This was in fact a lockdown, bringing the factories to a standstill. Many of the garment workers headed straight out of the capital Dhaka and back to their villages. Others stayed in crowded accommodation in the city. No one knew when their work would resume or how they would survive.
My name is Morshad Ali Khan. I am a journalist here in Bangladesh, in Dhaka.
Morshad has been working with me on this, and he's been following this story from the beginning. He says his city has become barely recognisable.
Dhaka is the noisiest and the busiest and the most chaotic city, and it has come to a halt. There were no cars, there were no honking buses. Dhaka has always had problems, with the beggars. If you are at a traffic light, you are sure to have somebody knocking on your windshield. But what happened after this lockdown started? We could see new faces, new desperate families. We could see women with children shouting for food in front of our house. Right now, as I am talking to you, it's raining though. Even in this rain, they're shouting for food. Many of them are garment workers, unfortunately. The number is increasing by the day.
That's because the ready-made garment, or RMG sector as it's known, is a huge employer with more than 4 million workers who are mainly women. The corona pandemic was pushing the sector, the country's biggest exporter and an engine of the economy, into a crisis. And it wasn't just a health crisis. As countries around the world went into lockdown, Western customers cancelled or suspended more than $3 billion worth of existing orders, threatening livelihoods and businesses.
We suddenly got a letter that our orders are cancelled, orders are on hold, so we need to close the factory. It was a big shock for us.
Mostafiz Uddin is managing director of Denim Expert. His factory is in Chittagong, a big manufacturing centre in the south of Bangladesh, where he employs 1,900 workers, making jeans for high street brands in the US, France and the UK. He told us that 2 British customers, Peacocks and Arcadia, had cancelled orders that were already in production. Arcadia also had a shipment of his jeans in a UK port, but they'd only accept these at a much reduced price.
See, the Arcadia sent a letter to us on 9th of April. They said that all the goods what you shipped, they said that you have to give the discount 30% on these shipped goods or it's cancelled. We will not take the goods. Now you tell me, is there any option for us? Can I go to UK and get my goods back? It's not possible.
And have they said that they just don't want anything else, or are you in further discussions?
See, that's the biggest problem. That is where my heart broken. I feel cry.
Mustafiz Uddin tells me that he received a mass mail-out from Arcadia rather than a personal email informing him of the cancellations.
I am more upset because of the way how it happening and how it being treating. These customers could have give me a call, had a discussion with me. Mostafiz, this is the problem. How can we solve it? We are all human beings. Isn't it we are partners? Isn't it we are their manufacturing partners?
Mustafiz did agree to a 30% discount for the shipment of jeans already in the UK, as he felt he simply had no other option.
It's completely like we invest to make their jeans. It's like that.
He says he gets paid around a quarter of the retail price of a pair of jeans. So with such tight margins, once he's paid for raw materials and labour, with a 30% discount, he doesn't even cover his costs. Meanwhile, some factories, like this one, continued during the lockdown with a skeleton staff making protective clothing, or PPE, for Bangladesh's doctors. We asked the supervisor to record on the factory floor for us. The announcement over the tannoy is advising workers on how to stay safe from infection. One of those making PPE is Moina. Morshad, the journalist working with us, spoke to her on the phone about the precautions she's been taking.
She told me they had to wear the mask. They had to wash their hands. She was placed about a meter away from her nearest worker. They had to keep their homes clean. They have to stop their children going outside.
This factory is part of Urmi Group, based in Dhaka. It employs 11,000 workers who make garments for export to the West. Most were sent home when the national holiday or lockdown was announced. Asif Ashraf, the company's managing director, describes the switch to making protective clothing for hospitals.
We did the PPE, which was for the local doctors. It's like a jumpsuit or a coverall. So the whole idea was to prevent those doctors to get infected. But going forward, when we make the PPEs for the international market, we will be following those standards.
Do you have any orders from other countries yet?
Yeah, they're asking. There are a lot of inquiries are coming. We have got one inquiry from the US.
He says the doctors in Bangladesh are satisfied customers.
Yeah, there are a lot of doctors who have spoken to me that they're happy with it and they want more. They felt comfortable using those things because at that point of time they had nothing.
There's great concern about the ability of Bangladesh's health service to cope with the spread of coronavirus. There are only 460 functioning intensive care beds in government hospitals and a similar number in private hospitals for a population of 164 million. Officially, nearly 11,000 people have been infected and 183 have died as we record this programme. But it's feared the real figures could be much higher, as testing is not widespread. Urmi Group isn't making PPE for profit at the moment. It's still a tiny part of the business. Like so many others, they've seen orders from Western customers suspended and payments delayed, which makes business very precarious. And how long do you think you could survive like this?
Not too many months, maybe another 2 months.
There have been many mixed messages coming from the Bangladesh government and business community about when and how economic activity would start up again, according to Dr. Hussain Zilla Rahman. He's chairman of BRAC Bangladesh, the largest NGO in the world, and he says that the lockdown, or holiday as it was called in March, soon turned sour.
People were crowding the beaches, so government had to put out notices that no, you have to stay at home. But then we also began to the economic crisis part of it. We ourselves did a big survey which showed that especially the poorer groups were looking at coming food crisis. So all this began to have an impact on the policymakers that should we reopen or not. The The RMG sector is important as an export sector, but is also politically very influential sector in terms of the owners. So they initially tried to push back for a early opening.
On the 4th of April, the management of the garment factory sent me an SMS asking me to come back to the factory to work.
That's Afia again, the garment worker we heard from at the beginning of the programme. After her factory was closed, she returned to her village outside Dhaka. But when she got a text saying factories were opening up again, her mother took out a high-interest loan to help her get back to the city to work.
I took a boat and then a van. Then I met loads of other garment workers and piled into the back of a lorry.
It wasn't only Afia who received this message. Morshad describes what he saw.
I went to see that hundreds of thousands of garment workers walking back to Dhaka. In the deserted roads, there are not any vehicles to be seen. There were only floods of people, All you could see is heads after heads or heads after heads of people.
But when Afia arrived,
At the factory gate, they told us to go away, that it was closed because of the virus.
They were firmly told, go back, we are not open, we are closed. The government, Ministry of Labour particularly, immediately moved in to put a ban on opening these factories.
there was huge confusion, and it was workers like Afia who paid the price.
When they told us to go back, I had only $6 left on me.
So there the tragedy began. Many of them did not have any money. They were so helpless. Many of them did not have a place to go back to. They were badly treated by their landlords. They were starving. They are so slim and lanky, and they were tired. That was the most painful thing to see. Many young women were forced to go into sex working. There have been demonstrations ever since, because those who got stranded in Dhaka, they demonstrated. Everywhere they were demonstrating, in Gazipur, in Tongi, in Ashulia, in Narayanganj. Many of them got sacked. Many of them were laid off.
One of those protesting was Afia. She joined about 70 others outside the factory gates as she needed her wages. Eventually she was paid, but only for 20 days in March and much later than usual.
In fact, I haven't met a garment workers. Out of, let's say, 15, 20 garment workers I talked to, I haven't met one who said she or he has been fully paid.
Rubana Haq is the president of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, or BGMEA, which represents over 2,000 companies. I spoke to her about workers not receiving their pay.
97% of the factories have paid their wages for March. It's only 3%, and that's also not more than 40,000 workers who have not been paid. In a sector where we have 4.1 million people, and just 40,000 does not even come in the percentage scale. But yes, paying wage to every worker is important.
She's indignant and says it's not them who should be criticised for not paying up.
But who am I to say this when in the West, multi-billion-dollar companies have opted for furlough? And here, a manufacturer from a third world who hasn't been paid by buyers is still under the steamroller, and I'm having to answer questions about why we haven't been able to pay. We haven't been able to pay even if it's for 40,000 people is because we did not get paid by the brands, period. It's as simple as that.
It was agreed with the government that workers who'd been temporarily laid off would receive 60% of their gross pay in April. But it's still difficult to survive on if you're earning a basic wage of around $100 a month. Mostafiz Uddin of Denim Expert says he can't expect his employees to survive on less than their full wages, or they might starve.
Now I am borrowing money from different people, borrowing money from friends, borrowing money from family and a bank and giving to the worker. Last month's salary I had given. This month also I will give the full salary.
So how long can you continue to pay your workers for?
Till I have breath, till I am alive in this world, I have to pay. I have to pay. I am responsible to do that. I have to do it. I am now thinking only that I need to take care of my worker. I am thinking in this way. There is no other alternative. And if I need, I will sell my personal property, whatever I have. If it's still is not enough, I will take loan from my government and I will take loan from the bank. I will do it.
A few weeks ago, he met his employees in the factory to distribute their wages. So what happened when you met up with your workers and you said you were going to pay them, they came to the factory?
Now you are making me cry. When I remember this, I want to cry. First of all, when I went to the factory, I see everybody is so much ashamed. They are very much worried about the future, when the buyer will give us the work. We want work, sir. We don't want charity.
Rubana Huq at the BGMEA, the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, is also very concerned about the future. The Bangladesh government is offering some help in the form of loans, but she's worried about the outlook if Western buyers don't start placing more orders very soon.
In June, we do expect a lot of setback for the industry.
What do you think will happen?
I envisage job losses. I envisage factory closure, factories shrinking.
And she estimates that 1 million jobs could be at risk.
All I can say is I'm just hoping and praying and keeping all my fingers crossed that the customers will remember us as strategic partners and remember the sense of loyalty that we offer and continue to engage with us, because it's just not a matter of commerce, it's a question of humanity.
That's a sentiment echoed by factory owners like Mostafiz of Denim Expert, who want their customers to pay in full for all orders placed. We put his grievances to Peacocks and Arcadia, the two customers from the UK, who he says have let him down badly by not honouring their original orders. In fact, none of the big Western brands we approached would talk to us about their Bangladeshi suppliers. We had no response at all from Arcadia, but Peacock said by email that rather than simply cancelling stock, they were in discussions with suppliers about them reselling to other customers, taking discounts, or being paid when the shops were open again and goods could be sold. They wrote,
As soon as we started to foresee a downturn on the high street, we contacted our suppliers as early as possible to provide them with a number of options for stock that was in the process of being manufactured and delivered, or hadn't yet started being manufactured. This was an essential step, as otherwise we would have been taking delivery of stock that we simply could not sell. We have since entered into negotiations with suppliers individually to find a solution that works for them. Our relationships with suppliers are fundamental to our business, and this is not what we would ever normally wish to do. But the current circumstances are such that this is a necessity.
But Mostafiz says he hasn't had any such negotiations with Peacocks about his cancelled orders. The trade body, which covers the fashion industry in the UK, the British Retail Consortium, did agree to an interview. Peter Andrews is head of sustainability policy there. Members include well-known fashion brands, although he wouldn't comment on individual retailers. I put it to him that Bangladesh's garment industry says they've been badly let down by their Western customers.
I think it's been an incredibly challenging situation. And since this pandemic has hit, there's been a collapse of a number of fashion retailers in the UK. And a huge part of that is due to the dramatic fall in customer demand. The retailers that we're speaking to are trying to work as closely as they can with their suppliers to ensure that they are able to safeguard their businesses and their workforce now and into the future. What retailers are recognizing is that they are able to work with those suppliers as closely as they can during this pandemic, but there will be a fallout from this pandemic that is going to require the governments and international donor countries to step in and help support the livelihoods of people working in the fashion industry for the medium to longer term.
So are you talking about Bangladesh's government? Are you saying that Bangladesh's government should be stepping in, really taking the role of the Western buyers?
No, I'm saying that what we need is governments to be working together, and so all working together to try and ensure that people can, continue to have a livelihood into the future.
Should all companies which have placed orders with suppliers in Bangladesh, should they be honouring contracts for things they've already ordered?
So if they've ordered goods and those goods are completed or in near end production, then where possible they should be paid for. And where those goods are either still in the early stages of production or production has not happened, then they should be working with their suppliers on a one-by-one basis to work out what solution can be done to safeguard the business and its workers.
So they do have a duty to do that.
Retailers and other businesses, and all responsible businesses, recognise their duties to protect human rights as much as they can do.
In this news report, women, all wearing colourful face masks, queue to have their temperatures checked and to wash their hands before starting their shifts. Less than 2 weeks ago, the garment factories suddenly started opening their doors again. And this time it was for real and wasn't a false alarm. It started as a phased return, bringing back 30 to 50% of their workforce. Outside, there's more life on the streets as the lockdown is eased slightly. However, as orders from many Western retailers have been cancelled or put on hold, business is slow but gradually resuming, and guidelines on spacing, hand washing and the wearing of masks have been issued. Here's Bangladeshi journalist Morshad again.
There are reports of few garment owners who are maintaining social distances.
But that doesn't appear always to be the case. One union spokesperson told me she'd seen pictures of workers squashed together. And even if there is distancing in the factories, that's almost impossible in the areas of the city where the garment workers live.
The slums are situated on 3-4 story buildings in the rundown areas of the city. Sometimes 4 of them in one room. It's all dirty. For the 15 people, there is only one toilet. There is only one water tap. Everybody is fearful. Everybody fears that if from the garment industry, there might be an explosion of, disease.
Thank you so much. This is Shivnath Roy.
On a crackly line, I managed to speak to Shivnath Roy at the Bangladesh government's Labour and Employment Ministry. I put these concerns to him.
So I think that no problem in future. Inspectors, they will inspect in this time. And BGME...
He says he's not worried. Factories will be inspected and rules complied with. And they're in touch with the garment bosses.
In our factory area, 6 feet social distance, they are working.
That's about 2 metres apart on the factory floor. And if the workers become ill, the garment companies should pay their health costs. People are saying that there isn't social distancing. So people are very worried about being back in these factories. Surely there's a health disaster about to happen if you've got people crammed into the factories again.
Oh, I did not think so. And this system is very effective, I think. And our laborers also very care and very...
He says the number of coronavirus cases is still low, and he's confident they can keep the workers safe. And
if we have get any complaint, then we will inspect, then we'll examine it, then we'll take the necessary action according to our Labour Act 2006.
The unions say it's too soon to reopen, that many workers are terrified of going back but feel they have no choice, and if they refuse, they'll lose their jobs. Dr. Hussain Zilla Rahman from the NGO BRAC thinks that the economy is being put first.
Essentially, the argument for ensuring livelihoods for the moment has won over the idea that we need to give attention to the pandemic. I mean, that's how I would read the situation for the moment. But one must also remember here that not all factories are going to open because there has been order cancellations.
When I ask Mostafiz Uddin of Denim Expert how he'll respond, he's cautious.
I am just watching. I want to see how things goes. If I feel my workers are safe, then I will open the factory. But if I see I cannot make the workers' safety, then I will not open. So this is where I am standing.
Afia's not going back to work. She's now very scared, but not because of the virus.
There are people from the company who are threatening us. They are like dogs unleashed on the workers. They have blacklisted few people who had demonstrated for pay.
Many garment workers have been either laid off or sacked. Many have been threatened to go away from the areas they were working in, especially the ones who have been demonstrating.
And protests are still continuing in Dhaka. Afia had been saving money with the hope of starting her own dairy farm.
But the current situation has killed that dream. I will look for a new job when all the garment factories are open, and God willing, I will get work somewhere else.
That's all from Assignment on the BBC World Service. The programme was presented by me, Caroline Bailey, and produced by Josephine Casserly.